Strength Fund, which have benefited over already 2,000 journalists, many of whom are women. We are also conducting a number of our overseas projects to support female journalists. Examples include in the Philippines, but I'm also happy to say that the British Embassy in Mexico is partnered with UNESCO on a project to fund support for promoting investigative journalism, which includes looking at how to support female journalists in this. I'll pause at that point in the spirit of time to allow some dialogue later. Thank you for bearing with me in the end. Take care.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Kanbar Hossein-Bor. I am being told that the echo can come from the interpretation. So if you turn back to floor, there's no echo. Like if you turn it off, apparently, Cindy, Kanbar, you were having problems with this. Apparently, it should be solved. Anyway, if it continues to be so, please let us know. So moving on, I would also talk to Anita Gurumurthy. Anita, so nice to have you. And also, what needs to be done by governments to guarantee gender equality in the media? It was so interesting what Kanbar was also sharing with us. And I do believe that there needs to be obviously an intervention from governments, yet this is a very sensitive issue because we do not want freedom of speech to be impeded because of this. So how do we draw the line?
Yeah,
or where do we draw the line?
That's, I think, as hard as a question can ever get, because where do we draw the line is about understanding a new public in the making, right? It's a seamless public which extends from the online to the offline, offline to the online, back. And secondly, the experience of new media for users is very corporeal. I mean, it's about the body, it's about pre-existing social identities. The body never goes away, your social identities don't go away. And therefore, thirdly, the structure of social power today has continuities and discontinuities. The online space, the digital space is part of the social structure of discrimination, violence, as much as it is about the bastion of equality, voice, and empowerment. I think the most important thing about government intervention, therefore, in respect of voice, in respect of equality, is to approach the new paradigm not through a lens of patriarchal morality, fear, and discourses of danger. You know, all the time we kind of look to reports about how women feel intimidated or inhibited. But I think the narrative that we really need to frame through the policies out there is to really look at things that are empowering so that women can embrace a new paradigm of public participation. So it's all about affirmative actions on a different set of fronts, not just about media, but also about encouraging the voices at the margins. You know, it might be a policy that seems unrelated, but the political economy of the platform economy is very important. Platform neutrality policies, gender access policies, content policies, etc. Now coming to a second dimension, to make this domain safe and violence-free, we do certainly need laws, and we need laws that are about looking at gender-based violence afresh, because there are new forms of experiences, empirically speaking, stalking, doxing, deepfakes, NCII, and so many others. So you need to modify and approach your legal frameworks with a kind of graded approach, you know, a framework that's a gradient, not criminalizing everything, but allowing perhaps standard setting by the government to flag and define content that may be really abusive, that may be violent. We also need the government to set standards for platforms so that the responsibility of platforms, the design related imperatives can all be articulated so that there's due process in the ways in which users and platforms interact. And what is patently illegal needs to be taken down through appropriate algorithmic application through human in the loop. So finally, we need that connection between virality and sexism to be broken if the public sphere has to be inclusive. And the government needs to put in place a new regulator who can also encourage educational activities, which is not just about digital literacy, but about decoding the public sphere, so to speak.
Thank you so much, Anita. Yeah, I absolutely agree. And I think that we also have to put or to address the fact that sometimes access to technology and access to the internet is also, there's also a disparity between girls and boys or men and women. So that obviously needs to be on the agenda. Zaineb, Dahmoul, please let us know your point of view on what needs to be done. Right now, we're talking about governments to guarantee gender equality in the media. We'll listen to you.
Greetings, everyone. So my name is Zaineb Dahmoul. I am from Tunisia, and I represent the World Association of Girl Guides and Girl Scouts. First, thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak on behalf of our movement of 10 million girls and women around the world. First, I want to say that I agree with those who say, yes, we made a progress when it comes to generation equality in media, because simply we made it. But is it enough? Of course, no. Around the world, women are far less likely than men to be seen in the media. As subjects of stories, women only appear in a quarter of television, radio, and print news. In employment as well, most employees in the media, such as radio and TV, are male, with the females occupying a lesser percentage. The job roles that women get in the media industry are most of the time junior and offering support. It is like rare to find women occupy leadership or senior positions, which most are occupied by their male counterparts, right? That's why we urge governments to create stronger mechanisms for girls and women to meaningfully participate in media spaces. Women must be equally involved as men by showing women in leadership roles and as experts on a diversity of topics on a daily basis, not as an exception. Also, we urge government to ensure that media include news about and for women. This is not just about covering women's issues, but it's about making sure content is balanced across gender lines and respect diversity. Also, we encourage governments to increase skills and leadership abilities through mentoring and development programs, ensuring that women have the confidence and skills they need to improve themselves. Mentoring and development programs are a way for more experienced professionals to boost the career of women whose skills may not yet be fully realized. I'm going to talk about the 1995 Beijing platform that flagged platform of action that flagged 12 key areas where urgent action was needed to ensure greater equality and opportunities for women and men, girls and boys. It is critical for all of us. But did media cover it? No, because in 1995, media wasn't enough present. Urgent action must be taken, and governments should emphasize on flagging it in the media. At that time, in 1995, we didn't have smartphones and smart devices. In the policy document, social media part is not covered. Harassment that happened on digital spaces is not covered. We need to look at what revisions should be made on regional, national, and international levels. Across different types of media, women are still portrayed in traditional, sexualized, or auxiliary roles far more often than men. Men are disproportionately portrayed in the role of main executive agent. There should be a law to stop this and take media companies accountable on this. In general, media continue to present both women and men in stereotyped ways that limit our perceptions of human possibilities. In advertisement, for example, we see that women are in the kitchen cooking or doing laundry, so they're changing young people's assumptions and stereotypes are built in their mind. Media should lead the way towards gender equality through gender sensitive and gender transformative content. For this, we need coherent policies, rules, and mechanisms on all levels, starting with national media policies and media industry self-regulation. Usually, politicians and decision makers talk about issues concerning women. Decision makers and governments create opportunities for us, as girls and women, to share our experiences with you, listen to our recommendations, and collaborate with us. Yet, media does not cover all of that. And now we are seeing that it is normalizing violence against women, since we have seen that media positively portray aggression in males and passivity in females. But we don't see how women react toward that. I mean, raising their voices and making a change. As I mentioned before, governments have to make sure that discussions are brought up to the public through the media. Media is responsible for what it is reporting. We must demand for policies that ensure that media is ethical and moral. I'm going to give the example of mentioning victims, for example, victims' names when it comes to sexual harassment or rape cases, and that doesn't respect the ethical standards when mentioning victims' names. The World Association of Girl Guides and Girl Scouts believes that media plays a huge role in influencing the way people look at the world and make them change their views. Thus, we are working hard towards achieving gender equality through media, and we urge governments to work more on it, start implementing laws, not just having them. Thank you.
Thank you so much. What a powerful message. And I absolutely agree. When we work in media, we tend to forget the impact that our stories have on the audience. And these are stories that have been told for centuries. And I think it is time to change our narrative. Just as Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie says, the single story creates stereotypes. And the problem with stereotypes is not that they are untrue, but that they are incomplete. They make one story become the only story. And that is what has been happening with women in media and with a lot of intersectionalities that I also think we need to take into account. How important it would be also to work with schools of journalism, to work with newsrooms, and also have the ability to convey a different message with those who actually have a voice in the public arena. In that sense, I would like to start with you, Sarah Adwoa Safo. What do you think is the role of the media in order to tackle all of these gender stereotypes? Please go ahead.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be part of this forum. I bring you greetings from Ghana. I think that a lot has been said by other speakers, which is that media is very important in the work that we do, looking at it from the perspective of a woman in leadership, a woman in politics, a woman in entrepreneurship. I think that the issue of stereotyping is a big challenge and a barrier for gender equality. Looking at where I'm coming from in Africa, there's a lot of stereotyping with young girls and boys growing up. And I think the media can play a very important role to erase that erroneous stereotyping, to position women and girls in a position where they can be leaders, they can be entrepreneurs, they can be whatever they want to be, and break the glass ceiling. I think that government also has a lot to do from that perspective. If we should continue to have books that have paintings or pictures of young girls only in the kitchen helping their mothers while the boys play football, or the boys are made to look masculine and in charge of everything all the time, I think that it doesn't help. So the media is very important. All forms of media, whether print media, social media, it's a way of giving information, it's a way of educating, it's a way of getting people aware of things that otherwise they are not aware of. So it's a very important tool to set the right agenda to empower women. And I must say that in Africa, the ECOWAS, for instance, in the ECOWAS sub-region, I must say we've been able to do a lot to portray women entrepreneurs, women in business through the African Women Digital Platform. And I think that we can learn from that, not only showcasing women in entrepreneurship, but women everywhere with the tool of the media. I think that with social media, the negativity that goes with it makes people shy away from it. But I must say that it's a very, very important tool as well. Being a politician, a woman, you know, the attacks that come on you through social media because there's very little restriction and all that. I think we need to set an agenda with the media again, using female journalists to educate those of us who are shying away from social media, especially, to veer into it because it has its positives as well. The youth are there. That is how they contact you. We're moving into a paperless world where it's ICT, it is technology, it's digitalization. So we shouldn't let the stereotyping that goes with the attacks on social media and everything let us shy away from it. I agree with an earlier speaker who stated that indeed we need to strengthen our legal framework. We have the laws. I mean, speaking from an African perspective, the issue is not having legislation. The issue is implementation of these legal framework or legislations. I am a lawyer myself. I can speak of a number of laws that we have in Ghana that protects the rights to speech, which is freedom of expression. It is in our constitution. Across the countries in Africa, every country has a constitution that safeguards the right to speak or the right to speech. So that is not the issue. The issue is, how do we make these laws reflective in our everyday work by not stereotyping women, by not letting our cultures, our differences, our backgrounds put people, more especially women and girls, in a position where they're seen as a weaker sex. So I think that journalists, more especially women journalists, can do a lot to help in this agenda. We need the he for she as well. We need the men to also add up their voices to it. But I think that the saying usually goes that women are their own enemies. We have to break that myth, that mystery. So if we can rally around all women journalists to make them understand that we need to position the girl child, position women, make the right stories about women, not negative stories that discourage other women from entering into leadership positions or decision-making processes, I think it's going to help a lot. Again, I have to say that we need also to encourage these women and protect them. I mean, journalists, be it social media, print, or other forms of media, television hosts and all that. When they're putting right issues, they can be a target for attacks, which an earlier speaker spoke about. So I think that if they have the needed protection from the states, the needed protection from the legal steps or legal procedures that has been put in place, they will be in the right position, not thinking about somebody harming them directly or indirectly, any member of their families, in setting the right agenda of gender equality and removing all forms of stereotyping so that women can actually reach their heights in whatever sphere that they find themselves in. I thank you.
Thank you so much. I would also like to remind our speakers, please not to turn off their cameras, even though if you're not speaking, because we all want to see your reactions. We all want to have you here with us. So please leave your cameras turned on. Yes, what Sarah mentions is very, very important. As a victim myself from trolling, bullying, threats, etc., I think it is important that we enable mechanisms for other women not to be discouraged in entering the public arena and entering the public speech arena, because that is what has been the historic mechanism for silencing us. We have been self-silenced also because we're afraid. So I think that that is a big issue and we need to tackle we need to tackle this right away. So next up, I would like also to have Nina Goswani talk about this. What can media do, Nina? Please go ahead.
Hi, yeah, thank you so much for having me. Just to remind you, I'm Nina Goswani, I'm the Creative Diversity Lead for the BBC, but I'm also on the Gender Steering Panel for the European Broadcasting Union. So I'm going to take this from a slightly European perspective, as well as UK and British perspective. We have been thinking a lot about this, obviously, over the last few years. And from the EBU perspective, we came up with a particular roadmap called All Things Being Equal, which gave us 4 key pillars that we've been adopting as public service broadcasters across Europe and the UK. So there's 4 points to this. Assess the situation using data, engaging everyone. So that's men, women, everyone. Articulating and introducing policies that enable gender equity to take place. And also for focusing on culture. So looking at those 4 pillars, these also subsume into something that we started in the BBC, in the heart of the BBC London newsroom, and that was the 50/50 Equality Project, which I lead, but was started by a presenter called Ros Atkins from Outside Source. What we do in the Equality Project is we look at content, we look at what is happening on TV, radio, and online, and we try and increase representation of women to 50%, so 50/50. And the BBC are not alone in doing that. We have 85 organisations across 26 countries, also taking part in using 50/50, and across 15 of the public sector broadcasters in Europe as well. So what are we doing? We're doing something very simple. We're doing what we call as our mantra, count, share, change. We're counting and we're assessing what our content looks like. We're counting the number of men and number of women to increase our representation of women to 50% women over a set period of time. We're doing that for what we can control, and I'll come back to that in a moment. But what we're doing with that data, real-time data, is we're analysing it, and we're working out, what are we doing? Why are we today on our daily programme hitting 70% men, 30% women? What can we change? How can we adapt that so that we can reach that 50% women in a month's time? Because that's the kind of target that we're setting for a daily programme. When we analyse that, then we share it with the rest of the teams. We are trying to innovate with each other. We're trying to give each other permission to create change, to go out, find new voices, to widen the pool of the talent that is being put on our content, to improve the experts, to try and remove those manuals, as Pascal was talking about earlier. And we can only do that together, and if we're sharing that data in real time together. And then obviously we're trying to create that change. Because at the end of the day, as many of you have said, there's only so far you can go with understanding what the problem is and having a strategy. You need to actually implement, and you actually need to create the change. And so that's what 50/50 does. We identify through the data what's happening. We then work out together how we collaborate and create the change, and then we go and make that change. And that's what we're doing. At the BBC, 2/3 of our teams this time last year, as the world was going into lockdown, reached 50% women representation in the month of March, which is an increase of 1/3 from when they first started on the project. And as I say, we're now doing that in 26 countries across the board. So for me, there are real solutions that the media are already putting forward. And through this discussion, one of the things that I kind of keep touching on in my head is that 20, 25 years ago, we were the content makers, we, the media, the traditional TV, radio, online. But now everyone can be a content maker. And so there is a bigger responsibility on us all to be trying to strive for gender equality. And I think about that not only from a media perspective, not only from a social media, Facebook perspective, but also from the likes of the fact that governments and state players are perhaps the biggest volume content producers that are out there at the moment. So they could be leading by example and trying to ensure that what they're putting out on their websites, on their social media, on their advertising is also 50/50 and help with that gender equality.
Very interesting. Thank you so much, Nina. Moving up to Edmund Yakani, since we're also rounding up our participation in order to have questions from the audience. So let's try and listen to your answer, Edmund, and then I'm going to have one final question so we can listen to what the audience also has to ask you guys.
Thank you very much, and hi to everyone. My name is Edmund Yakani from South Sudan, and I'd like to speak in terms of what role can media play in building feminist agenda, and specifically in conflict set contexts. I would like to first to confirm all what my colleagues have spoke before. I don't repeat it because for the sake of time, but I think it's a right time now. We need to start questioning who set the narratives in the media. If you want to put a feminist media. So I think setting a narrative in the media is very important, and I do agree, and I do accept my colleagues who say it. yeah, once in the past, the media is really male dominant and there's a lot of stereotypes against women. I'll give an example, for example, in a context like Africa, where I'm speaking from, South Sudan, where it's a conflict-prone state, you come to realize that you only see images of female politicians once they have done something bad. One that's done something good, you can't see the images in the forefront of the media. And I think that depends on who are the editors and why the editors are doing that, and to what level are we informing the editors in terms of really setting an agenda which is feminist. So for me, what really, if we want to set, we want to play with the media to set a feminist role or to set a feminist agenda, the best, most important is that the women who are in the media sector, what role are they playing? What level of leadership are they given? What level of decision have they given? And I think even if you can build a medium-owned, women-owned media houses that can take lead in that in order to complement the gap that is existing. Because one of the biggest things I can see in my country, like what the last speaker spoke from BBC, is that if you look at the media and look at angle of 50-50, where is the chance given to the male, where is the chance given to the female, you come to realize that the media, the traditional media that exists in South Sudan is really a male dominant media. And I think in most of African countries, media is a male dominant because men have the money, they can own media houses and they can set the narrative to media houses, they can decide. At the same time, most of the editors are male and they couldn't play a big role in setting a feminist agenda in the media. So I think media play. One thing I like to bring is that also the male journalists approach my own fellow male journalists in the media house to understand why we need to give equal opportunities and why we need to set a feminist agenda in the media, because that is a part of society. That's a part of section of society. We want to leave it out. We can't really say the media have to be all male dominant and want to leave out the voice of the women. So for me, in terms of my experience in context of South Sudan as a human rights activist, I'm also like, I add my voice to my sister who have spoke from Ghana. I'm a lawyer by profession. There's a lot of incidents I can talk about, but I don't repeat for the sake of time. But I think it's a right time now that even the social media, we need to see women taking lead, coming out and putting it up. Like I've been looking at our politicians in East African region, which is covering South Sudan, Uganda, Kenya, Tanzania. I'm trying to see how many female politicians are so active in Twitter. What are they tweeting? For example, ministers, are they tweeting about their work? Are they sharing in Facebook about that? There's a bit of a little performance from female who are really ministers, who are leaders, who are tweeting, who are engaged in social media. So I think I do agree with some of the speakers who spoke before that this is the right time to get female journalists to speak to those female leaders who are sort of like really moving away from media, are shy in using the media, because if one media to set a feminist agenda, then we need to see the few female who are available, they play an instrumental role in the available media outlets. I don't take a lot, but as I said, I agree with the previous speakers who spoke before me. I actually share the same concerns that they have. I said the same recommendation they have. For the sake of time, I wish to respond to questions that may be thrown to us as speakers, but I I'm speaking from context of where it's really a conflict setting, and start asking what role can media play in setting feminist agenda. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Edmund. There seems to be a bit of a problem with your connection, but I think everything came across just fine. And I actually couldn't agree more. We also need a lot of allies, and we also need to have men take a deep look inside and understand their deep connection towards this problem, because this is not a problem women created, and it seems that we magically have to fix it, and we don't even get the tools to do so or the power to do so. So actually, I think that that is a very important perspective. Rounding up, please, let's try and keep this short so we can also listen to questions from the audience. Cindy, I'm going to go back to you. What would be your recommendations to comply with what was established in the Beijing platform and in the GEF and with the Action Coalition on Technology and Innovation?
Thank you so much. In terms of really working to create a world where we have true gender equality, one of the things that I'm very proud that we do is we partner with civil society. And so we work with over 400 organizations around the globe. Almost half of them are women's safety organizations, Anita's, for example, and Committee to Protect Journalists, like sort of broad-based safety organizations. Some are specific, but we really need to create a world where it would never occur to someone to attack any journalist, especially a female journalist. And until then, and while we're working to do that major social change work that Nina mentioned, we need to also be providing tools and resources and protections to women and women journalists while we're working on that pretty phenomenal social change effort. So for example, if somebody posts the question, I'm happy to answer it and provide a few links, but we've got a journalist guide, safety tips with all sorts of ways to control your experience. Some of my women journalist friends actually prefer to post their stories on Facebook and Instagram because they have more content control over the comments than they do if it's on their main media website, mainstream media page, where they don't have any control, a profanity filter, or any way to keep the discourse sort of civil and yet still being engaging with their readers. One of the other things that we're doing is we have a journalist registration program now in almost 40 countries, and we add extra protections for journalists because we know they're targeted. And so we want to keep their accounts secure. We want to keep their ability to stay online protected. And so I'll also post a link to the journalist registration resources. But essentially the big message I want to share is that for gender equality, we have to work together with government, civil society, and the private sector so that we can envision and realize this world free of violence. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I would also like to know what Anita has to say about this.
Sorry, I just took a second to unmute. Yes, I think as previous speaker just mentioned, the most important thing, we're not talking about just a digital divide. We're talking about a divide in narrative power. So in the post-truth world, so to speak, whose story counts? So the Secretary General, UN Secretary General's report on digital cooperation has brought to center stage the human rights implications of data and AI. And I think that a lot of things need to change in the ways in which we frame the human rights discourse, perhaps in the next 100 years in the digital age, right? So we need a new mandate for the CEDAW committee, for the special rapporteurs. For instance, the UN Special Rapporteur on Minority Rights just now is, putting together a very important document on sexism and sexist hate speech against minorities. So similarly, these agenda within the UN systems really have to improve. The second, I think, is a very important and non-negotiable benchmarking on accountability standards for artificial intelligence. And I think that we do need the UN guiding principles on business and human rights to really nudge the private sector on AI for news feeds, avoiding gender biases in targeting, racial profiling, to simply cut out content that is polarizing. And we welcome the recent human rights policy of Facebook, and we need all platforms to really look at such a thing. But the benchmarking of human rights really is not a privatized activity. We need to understand that there's only so far that private consulting firms will do in trying to audit algorithms of the private sector. We do need global benchmarks that are endorsed by states, and we need national governments to really make sure that the kind of polarization and hate we see because of an algorithmified public sphere is really checked. And there, I think, calling to attention the fact that there is a contradiction between the engagement rate that the private sector seeks through clickbaiting and the ways by which, social media can become a space through, compassionate, empathetic, and critical thinking based democracies. This contradiction has to be essentially bridged if we want to really see a feminist future. Thank you.
Thank you, Anita. Kanbar, what is your take on this? And after this, we will proceed to questions from the audience.
Well, thank you very much. For me, I'm as someone who is trying to help develop an international response to this issue, I find the discussion really, for me, fascinating, but also a reminder of the extent of the challenge that we have. Because without stating the obvious, what we're seeing here in this context of media freedom and women is a reflection of wider societal issues. That media and women is not going to operate in a vacuum. So long as we do have the injustices that people have described, namely women continuously suffering despite the progress, unfortunately, we're going to still see women in media are also a reflection of this particular problem. What we do about it at the micro level, these discussions are really important because we can't do enough to restate the problem. I think it's very easy for us to lose sight of the problem because in many contexts, people almost seem to think that there's a lot of progress and the problem will go away. So these sessions are really helpful to restate that the problem persists. At the macro level, what I can say is that the Media Freedom Coalition, we will be having another major conference hosted at the end of this year, and I will speak to my colleagues in the executive group of 8 other countries to see what steps we can be taking as a coalition to shine a light on these issues through the various platforms that we have. So that's one thing I take away from this particular context, and a commitment to all of you that we will raise this issue and see what more we can be doing. But I'm really grateful for all the valuable insights, especially the cross-sectional insights that we've had, in particular the points about women in different contexts, different backgrounds, and different countries. Thank you very much. Over.
Thank you so much. So I'm gonna start with this question, and I would like first Pascal and also Sarah to answer this. Are there any global programs on the agenda to facilitate access to uncensored internet, which I also believe is a big issue that we have to have on the table? I mean, I can see by your face, Pascal, that this is also a very difficult question and a surprising one, but is there anything you can tell us about it? And after that, I would like to listen from Sarah Adwoa, please.
Sorry, can you repeat the question one more time? Are there global programs for uncensored?
Are there any programs on the agenda to facilitate access to uncensored internet? Because I believe this is a very big concern for the audience, because not in every country do we have uncensored access to the internet. So I do believe that also countries that have this access should be able to work with the other countries to assure this.
Yeah, it's a very good question. Actually, I've been posted as an ambassador in Africa, and it's not all open and transparent news, of course. We have quite some programs working with civil society on journalism and openness and transparent news. I'm not aware of a global program that we are supporting, I have to say, but we have many programs on safe space, safe internet space, and in training journalists, both male and female journalists. But I can promise you to dig a little bit further, but we don't have a Dutch funded program, but I'm sure that they are global programs.
So if anyone knows, please answer, but maybe Sarah or Edmund knows something about this. By his reaction, I could tell that he might be onto something. So
I think I'll follow suit from the earlier speaker. I think that it's an area that you've mentioned that's important, that I will personally avert my mind to it. But speaking right now, I think I would have to do some more research on that. And I think that it's good you brought it up. From our perspective here from Africa, I think we would have to look at it again. Thank you.
okay. So moving on, I would also like Sonia to answer on this question, and maybe Nina. From your experience as communicators, how is motherhood portrayed for women with a successful career? I think that this is a basic question. And from someone who comes from sports, it has been so interesting to see how motherhood is portrayed, for example, in sports media, but I think in media in general. So Sonia, if you could begin, I'd really appreciate that. Thank you.
Hola, bueno, mira, justo escribí un libro sobre la maternidad. La maternidad, la verdad que a las mujeres nos desafía de manera muy fuerte, porque todavía nuestra sociedad tiene una mirada muy paradojal y contradictoria de la maternidad. Por un lado, se la alaba, se la ensalza, digamos, se la valora mucho, pero al mismo tiempo no se le da las condiciones a las mujeres para que puedan llevar adelante una maternidad sin estar sobrecargadas de trabajo, porque no hay las licencias suficientes, porque en los espacios laborales no hay condiciones para que o puedan seguir con la lactancia, o si deciden otra cosa, realmente puedan tener una crianza compartida, porque todavía el tema del reparto de los cuidados hacia adentro del hogar están muy mal repartidos y sobrecargan a las mujeres, y porque el Estado no lo ve todavía como un problema a resolver, porque todavía las políticas que hay en este sentido son parches, son pocas, no llegan a todas las mujeres. Y creo que la pandemia justamente le dio visibilidad a este tema, ¿no? Al tema de los cuidados y la necesidad de que como países y como estados y a nivel global veamos todo el aporte que estamos haciendo las mujeres sosteniendo las crianzas, los cuidados de hijos y también de personas mayores, ¿no? Entonces esto claramente muchas veces es un obstáculo para poder insertarse laboralmente con empleos a jornada completa, con empleos con seguridad social, para poder pelear ascensos, para poder pelear por esa paridad que sí las peleamos en muchos espacios, pero es difícil de sostener. Entonces, me parece que el mundo tiene que empezar a ver la maternidad de otra manera, incorporarla al ciclo de la vida, y que el trabajo también sea parte de ese ciclo de la vida, ¿no? Que nos cuidemos no solo las mujeres, sino toda la sociedad y los estados que tengan una perspectiva distinta. Y hoy además esto también se cruza con el tema del medio ambiente. También tenemos que ser cuidadosos y cuidadosas del medio ambiente. Creo que justamente la pandemia llamó la atención sobre estas dos cuestiones de manera muy, muy fuerte. Eso es lo que se me ocurre decir.
Gracias, Sonia. I believe that some of you were not able to listen to the English interpretation, so I'm going to just make a very synthetic English translation from what Sonia said. I hope it is correct, Sonia. But Sonia has written a book about this. She says that there is a dichotomy in the speech in terms of how we treat motherhood. On the one hand, we put it on a pedestal. On the one hand, we talk about women being able to bring life to the world, but on the other hand, we are not enforcing mechanisms that allow women to be in the professional sphere as they would like to. It doesn't grant them access to different capacities in terms of maternity leave that is paid for, rights for women who are working and have children. So it actually becomes an impediment in terms of professional development for many women. So we actually, as a society, have to understand how the pandemic also has put into perspective the caregiving that women are that is brought upon them, and this big responsibility, and that it is important for also men to understand that caregiving should be their task, that they should be part of this. And this also has to do also with the perspective in terms of protecting the environment. So everything is just kind of crossing into one lane, and structures need to be changed in that sense. Sonia, thank you so much. I am so sorry for my interpretation. I hope it kind of came across. And Nina, I would like to listen to you on this subject.
Yeah, absolutely, and thank you for the summary, because I was one of those who had a problem with the English translation, so I appreciate it. Thank you. So yeah, to pick up on some of Sonia's points, I think when it comes to portrayal of motherhood, gender-based kind of employment rules are quite impactful in terms of how things are framed. And I think actually one of the things that we've seen through actually seeing that increase of women's representation on the BBC is that we're finding that motherhood is portrayed in different ways. We're hearing about it from different aspects. And that's the importance of giving women voice at the end of the day. Because the more that we give women voice, the more they have the opportunity of telling their stories. I'll give you an example of what happened for the Vietnamese service. And I think at the BBC, which was a really interesting thing. When they joined 50-50 and looked at increasing women's representation, they never thought they would reach 50% women contributors. Within about 4 months, they were 80%, 80%. And I asked them why, you know, what happened? How have you moved from not thinking you'll even get to 50%? It's because they started speaking to women. They started asking them about their stories, and the result was that they had a wealth of stories and different perspectives on parenthood, on other stories that they didn't know about, that they had never seen before. And so they were then using those stories on their content. And that changed the dynamics for them. It also changed the perception the audience had of their particular product, with their audiences even looking at seeing whether they could come and work at the BBC as a result of that increase. Because if you're improving that representation on screen, there has to be a reason for it. And so that's the power of role modeling, whichever direction it's in, whether it's motherhood or if it's in a different direction. Because by bringing awareness, raising the education around these particular areas, we're giving people different perspectives on different people's lives in different scenarios. And I think that's really, really powerful. And you can only get that by having true equality when it comes to voice, when it comes to gender.
Thank you so much, Nina. Now I have a question for Zaineb Dahmoul. It says, how will rights of a female journalist be safeguarded, especially in an Islamic cultural context? I don't know if you could speak to this.
Can you just repeat the question, the first part?
Absolutely. How will rights of a female journalist be safeguarded, especially in an Islamic cultural context?
Yes, so yeah, I'm Muslim, and there's like some ideas or that are really wrong, that are really spread in the whole world, that like women in, for example, Islam are now, for example, allowed to practice journalism or to be journalists. But I want to say that it is really, really the same for the whole world. And we are like here, if we want, like, you see, I am a woman, I am a young girl, and I am really practicing my rights of like, of speaking, of taking part in discussions and all. But unfortunately, and I say, unfortunately, there are people who are really spreading these informations, because women, like in all cultures, as well as Islam, are safe. And if they want to practice any kind of activity, they are free to do it. So we cannot just make Islam as an exception or something like this, because all women in this world are equal, and there's no like specific rules for Muslim women, for example. Thank you.
I absolutely agree. Clap on that. Edmund, Yakani, we have an interesting question here. Is there any kind of manual or normativity in any of your countries that regulates feminist approach for media, as well as a proper capacitation for journalists and media CEOs?
If I speak to my country, I would say yes. We have manual, and we have been working this together with UNESCO. We have been doing together with some assistance from UN Women, and we have a guidance, and that's what, and this what empowers me to start checking the media. How much is the media really giving a space for feminist voices, for setting a feminist agenda? So it's there. The only thing is not becoming the capacity. When it comes to the capacity, still there are cultural practices that, like what my sister have said about the Islam, which for me shouldn't use an excuse. Still there are voices denying young girls joining the field of journalism and becoming as agencies that bring out the voices of the communities. Because if you're a female journalist, it does not only bring out the voice of women, she brings out the voice of the society, for the attention of the society. So for me, the manual is there, and we're doing our level best to work with CEOs of companies, with owners of media companies, and even train editors in chief of papers. In terms of language, even sometimes we realize that as how much we want to put a feminist sort of like agenda in the media, but still language play a big role in the way how we use language. That sometimes demonstrate negative attitudes or negative stereotypes in behind the curtains towards females. So I would like to say yes.
Thank you so much, Edmund. I mean, we have so many questions that are unfortunately going to be unanswered, but some of you have also been answering the questions from the audience through the private chat, which I really appreciate, or well, at least the chat that we have here. I mean, we thank all of the speakers for their valuable participations, and I think that it should be highlighted that this is not a local problem. This is a global problem. It has intersectionalities. We need to take into account all of the different perspectives from so many women around the world, from so many cultures, from so many perspectives, but still, this is a global problem, and we also need men to tackle this. This is not a problem we created. This is not a problem that we're going to solve ourselves. And if you want us to do that, at least give us the power positions to do so. But since that is not happening either, well, we should all be on one front together. It has been an absolute delight for me to be here. I very much appreciate all of your insights, all of your perspectives. Thank you so much. And to everybody who has been here, thank you, because these are times in which sometimes we're not open to listening, and to have you listen to us for an hour and a half has been absolutely honorable. It is a pleasure. And thank you all so much. Greetings from Mexico, and hopefully we can do this in person some other day. Big hug.
Thank you.
Bye, guys.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Thank you. Bye. Stay safe.
Bye-bye. Stay safe. Thank you, guys.
Goodbye.
Thank you. Bye.
There we are. Bye, guys. Sonia, un gusto. Un abrazo.
Igual.
Discúlpame si mi traducción no fue la más acotada, pero bueno, hicimos lo que pudimos.